Hey guys, Jordan from Pre-Condo here. I just did a video with Tom Story from the Stories team about the differences between pre-construction investing and resale condo investing in Toronto. If you don't know Tom, he's a top producing agent in Toronto who specifically focuses on resale condos. So I wanted his insight on the pre-construction versus resale condo investing debate, and I wanted his take on where he sees the market going. And we filmed this video in two parts, first focusing on the pre-construction side, and then we moved on to the resale side of the market. So once you're done with this video, go watch his video. The link is in the description. And if you're not already subscribed to him, go give him a subscription. I believe he's doing a Lamborghini giveaway as soon as he hits 4,000 subscribers. So you can go subscribe and take that up with him. And the truth is, guys, I don't think there's any right or wrong answer. Pre-construction can work for some of us who, don't have our 20% ready today and we want extended deposit structures, or we want to leverage our money over a longer period of time, or don't want a tenant or a mortgage today. And resale, for example, is generally far cheaper than pre-construction. So you can save 10, 15, sometimes 20% buying a condo on the resale market. So it really depends where you are in your investing journey and what your finances look like to determine which is the better route for you. So with that being said, let's get into the video.
All right, Thomas, if I may.
Let's do it.
What if condos are up 20% year over year already? Where do you think, or do you think the segment has a chance to go 30, 40% by year end?
I don't think don't quote me to say they're going to go 40%, because I don't think that type of growth is really realistic or sustainable. I do think, though, that if I just look at every other asset class, and I think we agree on this, is that condos do have the most room for percentage growth this year. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw touching 30% growth. And I say that mostly because when you look at the amount of condos that have sold, just from the January numbers, is like 72% of every resale condo that sold under 800,000. So we're looking at just average price condo. Yeah, I think it's realistic. We could see 25 to 35% increases just this year. But I also do think, when I looked back at the 2021 numbers for price increases for all asset classes, we saw like a good chunk of it happen from January till April. And then we hovered over the summer, then jumped up again at the end of the year. So it's like, I think condos will continue here, even with the looming potential rate hike, if it happens or not. Will have a little bit of effect, but they're going to keep going because that gap is just bigger than it's ever been before. But I'd like your perspective on this as well.
I actually, I have a follow-up question to that.
Sure.
And that is, so in the last, really recently, in the last 2 weeks or so, I would say, everyone on Twitter and all of my colleagues who do resales are talking about the uptick in freehold inventory.
Yep.
What are we seeing on the condo resale side?
Yeah. So I listed 2 condos today. I had 8 showings on one and 6 on the other, and on day 0, right? Where like most people don't see it till they wake up tomorrow in their property search. I consider day 0 bonus showing day for the most part, unless people are actively looking at it. We haven't seen it change yet for condos. So even though resale, because it was inevitable based on the rate that they were going at, that more inventory had to come. But I will say, so typically we don't see market shifts actually happen until a few months later, when we look back and go like, oh, that was the moment that it happened.
Yeah.
But I've had several clients reach out to me saying like, hey, did you see this sale in my building? I had to do a double check on the price. And when that starts happening and people understand, oh, prices are up 20% from what they were in November in my building. Okay, well, maybe I will sell this property, because I was thinking about selling later in the year, but this looks like a pretty good opportunity. As that happens, that's why I think prices will continue to go up. But once we hit April, we're going to see a flood of condo listings as well. Still not enough to like curb all the demand, but I think prices will have to hover. So we haven't yet seen the type of inventory increases with condos as we have seen with freehold properties. But it's just a matter of time until sellers start noticing what's going on.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, even on my end, I obviously don't do a ton of resale, but eventually a pre-construction building becomes a resale building. Yeah. And so I'll have a lot of clients in buildings, and they'll come to me to sell when they feel like they want to exit the market. And I have quite a few people who want to gear up for a spring list. And so now I have to learn what this listing paperwork is all about, because I'm used to builders doing my paperwork for me. And so I'll probably have to get help from one of the guys on my team just to fill those things out.
I can walk you through it. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, I don't want to make a mistake here. So one question I had for you is, what are your thoughts on buying parking and lockers, specifically parking, when it comes to pre-construction, given how high some of the parking prices are? Does it add value on the resale? And if so, is it correlated one-to-one with what you're paying pre-construction, or is it a little bit of loss there?
Well, if you look at like what parking spots are going for pre-construction, 80 to 100 grand in some of the high end buildings. And then you look at like what we would value it at when we're running numbers on a resale building. When I say resale building, let's say a 10-year-old condo, right? So like it's been established, we know what it is. We value parking from $30,000 to $60,000 depending on the building for resale. So there's definitely a gap there. Now, for most end users, I do recommend getting a parking spot if you can, because it's that convenience factor. It's like, yeah, you could maybe rent a parking spot, and over the term that you own that property, not paying interest on the difference on your mortgage from owning the spot would make more sense. But if the seller of that spot that you're renting wants to sell the property, you don't have a spot, and that's a headache, right? So yeah, ideally, when we're working with buyer clients on the resale space, we would love to get parking on every property we can, but it's not always realistic at certain price points. On the pre-con side, like if I was buying pre-con and I was strictly a numbers game and I was an investor, I probably wouldn't get a parking spot, or maybe wouldn't even be allowed to get a parking spot. And you can talk more to this. If I'm buying a one bed, like can I even buy a parking spot in these new buildings?
No, for the most part, no. You're going to be shoved on the wait list and maybe get a call.
Yeah.
Because they have to sell out all of their 2 and 3 bed inventory to make sure they have parking left over, right?
But I do think as the downtown core just continues to have this type of density, and like if you look at like Portland and Wellington, because like I own a condo just on Stewart Street there, and like with the well coming in, the commercial stuff going on at the corner of Portland in front, just like everything happening, like for how bad traffic already is, like I'm hoping less people want parking because it's just going to make downtown worse.
Yeah,
like,
me too.
There's just we can't have more cars. Like it's already insane.
No. We all need e-scooters. I'm a firm believer.
Yeah, I like it.
So what about on the rental side? Because I know you list rentals for your landlords.
Yep.
When you're talking about a one bedroom specifically, how much of the tenant pool are you ruling out by not having parking?
Not that much. In terms of, not very much at all. I have not found any real correlation to having parking or not parking. It's just adjusted in the price by $150 to $200 for these rentals. It's not affecting it that much, because if you're living in these downtown areas, a lot of people don't need parking, or if they're renting, they understand that they could just go down to the cork board in the downstairs lobby and rent parking from somebody else in the building. Yeah.
Cool. So amenities, we've got some cool ones coming to pre-construction, or maybe gimmicky. I don't know. We've got TikTok studios. We have salt yoga rooms, and we have, impressive lobbies with 18, 24-foot ceilings and $250,000, $500,000 chandeliers. What do you think that affects on the resale market? Do you think people are going around looking for TikTok studios? Does it add value, or how much?
Well, listen, one day all these 14-year-olds on TikTok will be buying homes, right? But by that time, these buildings will be 10 years old and they might have moved on with that stage of their life, right? Joking aside, like I think they're mostly gimmicks. I even remember the first time I saw a pet spa. I was like, whoa, this building has a pet spa? That's awesome. You go in, it's literally a metal table with a hose.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, like I guess it's a pet spa, right? I don't know. It depends. Like, I think if there's a really, really cool boutique building with like I bought pre-construction and waterworks, right? And I bought that in 2018. I did very well. I liked the fact that, none of the units were identical in terms of the floor plans. And you walk into that lobby and you feel like there's something special going on here. Like it's a really cool building. So I do think it will affect, the purchasing decision-making of people. But if you look long-term, like it's also just going to build into what your condo fees are going to be in the future. And I think that people should make purchasing decisions on properties based on that where they spend 99% of their time, and that's in their unit.
100%. 100%. I want to normalize low amenity buildings with no 24-hour concierge. Look at 15 Beverly, for example. Beautiful building, amazing amenities, but it comes at a massive cost.
Yeah, I'd rather have a no frills building. The first condo I ever owned in, which I still own, I just rent out now. Nothing, not a gym, nothing. It's just units and 2 elevators. 20 Stewart Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you look for when you're shopping for resale condos with clients? What does your wants list look like?
Yeah. So the big thing that I look at actually is having some type of wow factor if we can find it. And you can describe that in different ways, right? Like it can be just a soft loft, a hard loft, have an amazing view, a really, really good floor plan. Because what I noticed was during 2020, when resale condos frankly took a beating, at one point I had over 20 listings at once, which has never happened to me in this type of market because things get snatched up. But at the time, 1 out of every 5 properties was selling. And why I'm going back to that is because the properties that were selling during that time had some type of wow factor, boutique building, something cool about them. And if the market ever flips and there's a ton of condo inventory, if you don't have a wow factor, which is a great floor plan, maybe an amazing view, these type of things, the only way you sell is your wow factor has to be your listing price, right? Because that can be a wow factor. So it's really breaking it down. Like a lot of condos that frankly are not good floor plans, not great buildings, are going to sell for really high prices today. But if things were to ever change, I want to make buying decisions not on today, but on the next, decade.
I agree with you 100%. This is what I tell, a lot of clients come to me on the pre-construction side and they say, so-and-so realtor said, well, view doesn't matter. And I'm like, it doesn't in today's market, but when things flip, you don't want to be on the market with 20 other comparable commodity condos. You want to be the one with something unique. But it is a great time. If you have some suboptimal floor plan and you're staring into a brick wall, now is a great time to dump that property.
100%. Yep.
So in the last year, I've had far more end users buying pre-construction from me than in any year previous, which is interesting because generally, 80% of my clients are investors.
Yep.
On the resale side, what are you seeing? Are you seeing the flip or are you seeing the same thing?
No, I'm seeing more end users than ever before. And it actually started in 2020 because we reached out to all of our clients that were still renting and said like, hey, I know you didn't think this was possible, but there's something happening here. Maybe we can get you into a condo that you wouldn't have been able to afford 3 months ago during that dip, right?
That's clever. That's why you're a top producer. That's I like that.
And a lot of people were jumping in. And when I look at, because I know a big thought process is like investors are ruining the market. And I own several properties. I'm thinking you own a few properties. I know a lot of our clients own more than one properties. And there's no doubt that investors are pushing prices up. But what I will say, at least in my experience from dealing with the listings that we've sold this year, the winning offer has been an end user every single time. And they are willing to pay the most amount of money as well. So I think that's kind of interesting. But yeah, I think the push of end users is as high as I've ever seen. Of course, we're still helping investors, but even on the resale side, like I know relatively the prices are less inexpensive than pre-con, but unless you're manufacturing cash flow by putting 40% down, like it doesn't, you're really just speculating. And I know speculating is seen as a bad word. It's not always a bad word. It's just, that's what you're doing in this market, because over the last 15 years, if you've taken that approach, you've become very wealthy.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I think to some degree, even when there is positive cash flow, you are still to a degree speculating. The only thing that changes when you have negative cash flow is your downside risk and how much you are speculating.
Yep.
At the end of the day, no one's buying a condo, even when they did cash flow in Toronto, for the cash flow. That's not where the money was made.
No,
it's not where the money's ever been made in property. Going back to the parking question.
Sure.
How much value because there are a lot of buildings that have some units that have balconies, some that don't. How much value does that balcony add?
I think there's a few factors. Balconies are kind of like the thing that you really want to have. And even if you don't use it, you like the idea that you have it.
Yep.
So like the first condo I ever owned didn't have a balcony. The second one I bought did have a balcony. I was so pumped about it. And then I realized that we live in Canada and you can only spend 4 months of time out there, right? Like realistically. But I think having a balcony versus not having a balcony, I would always get a unit with a balcony if you can. And there's no doubt that when you see properties with like true terraces, that they sell for an absolute premium. And it's really hard to do the math on what it's worth other than what that one buyer is willing to pay and how much value they're putting on it.
100%. No, I agree. I think COVID was kind of the best litmus test for how many people actually use their balconies, because everyone's stuck at home. A lot of them have balconies, and you're driving around Toronto and you're like, nobody's ever on their balcony. So, I mean, yeah. And the other issue is like most balconies are 5 feet deep. You don't have, you've got room for a couple of chairs. You don't have room for a table. You can't sit around and eat dinner out there. So some buildings have the nice 6 and 7 foot depth, but for the most part, they're too shallow to make any use out of it unless you're a smoker, in which case you need the balcony.
Right. Yep. Or if you want to stop smoking, buy a place without a balcony.
Yeah, that's actually genius. We should release an ebook on that, how to quit smoking. What do you think? Do you do a lot of stuff in Etobicoke?
Our team does a few buys out there every year, but I would say we're more central, but we gander over there if a client needs us to. Yeah.
So what do you think about Islington and Kipling Station? Because to me, that's been an area that's been undervalued for the Bloor line in general, undervalued for some time.
Well, it's like you just keep going west and you think it's cheaper, but then prices catch up. And it's probably like, I use the analogy all the time where like the Junction, an area that like we would have scoffed at even 10 years ago. I'm like, I wish I bought 5 properties there. And we have to keep looking at like, what's the next area going to be? And that could very much be an area that has that room for growth. Another area I look at that's like not as far west, obviously, but like the Belgravia, like Eglinton and Dufferin, like one day the LRT will be complete. One day it will happen and it will be a good thing. And all those houses around there too. I just think there's so much room for growth, but yeah, that's one of those pockets where we're going to look back in 5 years and be like, it was sitting right in front of us. Why didn't we take advantage of that?
Absolutely. What do you think of 36 Liz? No, I'm kidding. What do you think of hotel residence splits?
I think they just don't see the type of appreciation that typical resale condos do. And I know it's gotten better with financing, but there was a time where you had to put down like, I think almost 50% down payment to get into those buildings because of the risk. I think some banks are doing 20% now. A lot of those buildings are filled with people that have them as second properties or their status symbols, or athletes renting $10,000 a month, and nothing wrong with that, right? Like that, it serves a purpose. But if I'm buying a condo to live in or as an investment, and I want to see growth with what the rest of the market is doing, I would probably stay away from those buildings unless there's something about it that really excites me.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is also a lot of the previous hotel res splits in Toronto are all under one corp.
Yep.
Which means you have shared liability. Whereas with some new projects like Sky Tower at One Young, for example, it's 2 separate corporations. So if you look at the legal level, for example, if you're buying a 55 unit on the 55th floor, you'll notice that it says legal level 45 because they're 2 separate corporations, which I think will save a lot of the risk.
So in that building, is it like if I live on the 50th floor and I'm 5001, could 5002 be a hotel, or is it split based on floor? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So first 10 floors hotel, and then it separates to residences, 2 separate corps.
Yeah.
So I think that's
a lot more safe.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
What do you think about 2-bedroom versus 3-bedroom condos in the core?
Well, these days, some 2 bedrooms are actually bigger than 3 bedrooms because they just jam 3 beds in, 780 square feet somehow. Right. I don't know. You look at them, like if it was me personally, I like 2 beds or 2+ dens. over 3 beds. But if you're just a pure investor and you go like, okay, if there's 3 true bedrooms, I can rent this to 3 students. Yeah, it makes more sense of what you can get on a rent perspective. But then you also have to be okay with the fact that you're renting to 3 students. And I always ask my clients, like jokingly, like I wouldn't have wanted to rent to myself when I was in university. So that's who you're going to get. Right.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is a good question, because, right now the requirement from City of Toronto is when you're building pre-construction, 10% of that building has to be 3 bedrooms.
Yep.
Developers will all tell you the same thing. The demand for the 3 bedrooms just isn't there. They're always lingering. And so, but what you'll find is the per square foot deal of the 3 bedroom at a pre-construction project relative to the ones is so unbelievably good that it kind of justifies itself. But yeah, no, that some of them are unbelievably small.
Yeah, for what they're jamming into the square footage, for sure. I don't know. Like, I think that's more of like a personal thing, and what type of, if you're going to rent it out, what you're looking for. And like, listen, for families that can't afford to buy a house, having a 3 bedroom is good. If you have 2 kids, you want 2 other bedrooms, even if they're small, that you can shut a door. And I think that's,
lock them in.
Yeah, that's
Keep
it.
them quiet.
Yeah. Send them to their room. Yeah. It's all like, go to your den. You're in trouble. Off to the den.
Yeah. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, man. Well, it's been an honor to do a little podcast here with the second best Toronto real estate YouTuber on the planet.
I'll take it.
Where can people find you?
YouTube, just my name, Tom Story, or Instagram @the Story Team. We're pretty active there as well.